We're going to be talking about No Heroes here, the song by Creamay. I think that it reflects the veteran's journey in society, and also shows that Technoblade had a knowledge of Greek literature. He would have been familiar with Odysseus and with Cincinnatus. Okay, Odysseus and Cincinnatus had two different interactions with the government in when they're asked to come back into service. Okay, Odysseus tries to pretend that he's insane. He runs around plowing sand, showing that he's insane. But in order to prove that he's not insane, they throw his baby in front of the plow and he immediately stops. So that shows you, one perspective that Techno may have had about government. Natus was given power and authority, and he took Rome back quickly, and then he immediately turned over power. He did not seek to be an emperor. He just went back to his regular life immediately. So both of these are perspectives that Techno may have thought about in his arc on the DreamSMP, and that arc is reflected in this song, No Heroes here by Creamay. All right, first one is power corrupts. Okay. So line 1 says, I joined the outcasts on the first day I was here. So we know that the outcasts, right, were the group that he joined that were trying to overthrow Pogtopia and install Lamamberg. Okay. So the context of this line is that he sided with the underdog in order to overthrow a tyrannical government. Now, if you think longer term, obviously you're going to run into conflict with these guys, but that's foreshadowing. All right, line 2. My plans were evil. I made that very clear. So they knew that he wanted to blow everything up from the beginning, and yet they still decided to use him, and they knew that he was not in favor of governments. Line 3. You dragged me along to play soldier in your war. So basically he's saying you decided to use me for your own purposes anyway. Even though they know he's a violent anarchist, they're going to use him for their purposes and then act like they didn't know afterward. Line 4. Well, it's time you learned I'm not your soldier anymore. So basically he's saying that we became enemies not because he blew stuff up, because that was his initial purpose, because that's his nature. But they know that. So the problem wasn't that Techno was blowing stuff up. It was that they became what he wanted to destroy. That what they originally were going to destroy. They were going to destroy a tyrannical government, and then they become a tyrannical government. Techno doesn't understand how they don't get the point. The point is that governments, power, corrupt absolutely. Okay, I call the chorus a monopoly on violence. So line 1 says, I'm the villain, I'm bad, I'm not going back to the life I used to have, right? Basically he's saying, you labeled me the villain, I'm bad for your government, so I can't go back to the life that I had before I woke up and knew the truth of their lies. That they are going to use force in order to uphold their government, just like the previous government. Line 2, I'm the traitor, I'm sad, I don't want to go backstab all my friends. So basically, I'm betraying you because I can't ignore the evidence that's in front of my eyes that you want to use my force, my violence, in order to have a monopoly on violence and get people to do what you want them to do as the government. Well, I have to leave my friends behind until they wake up. Basically, people are going to eventually see it the same way as Techno, but they're not going to immediately realize it because they're in positions of power, and so they're getting to use that power, and so they don't necessarily want to give up that power. But later, when they're disposed of that power, they're not indisposed of that power. They're going to not see it the same way anymore, and they're going to realize that Techno was right all along. Line 3. But you left me with no choice. It's you or the voices in my head that say. Basically, this line, right, is not immediately evident. Basically, he's saying he has no choice. He's backed against the wall because you're giving me two choices. I have to choose between you and the voices in my head. Now, voices in my head is a silly reference to his chat a lot of time. He's also talking about the evidence that he has in front of him or what he thinks about the issues. The voices in his head could be what he has seen and what he's experienced and the things that he thinks about, the things that he's haunted by because of what he's done for L'Manberg. This again reflects like a PTSD, a similar circumstance to what maybe military veterans have experienced. Okay, so basically, either he has to accept their actions, the ones that he knows are bad, or he has to accept what he knows to be true. And so he has to either be true to himself or lie to himself and say that it's okay what they're doing. Line 4. Blood for the blood god showed no remorse, chaos in my soul, and nothing more. So the blood god interpretation is kind of hard because blood for the blood god, you're giving the blood god what it wants, right? So blood for the blood god, blood is obviously kind of equated to violence, right? And so violence for the violence god. So what can we extrapolate from that? Now, he uses this phrase outside of the Technoblade arc, but if we think about it, violence for the violence god, violence for those who are asking him to do violence, right? And so he's going to use that violence against those who expect him to do violence, right? Show no remorse, chaos in my soul, and nothing more. So he's going to use violence on those who demand violence, but he's not going to feel bad because chaos equals freedom. There's no coercion, right? He's not being no one should be coerced by government to do things they don't want. And he is starting the trend by not being forced by the government. Verse 2, society versus government. So line 1 says, so you think you're a hero because you fight for what you believe. So he's talking to Tommy. He's saying, oh, Tommy, you think you're a hero because you stand for your government, right? The thing is that Tommy hasn't separated government from society. He thinks that they're the same things, or he may even think that government is the protector of society. Line 2. Well, I'm fighting for anarchy and chaos in the land, so nothing can rise up again. Okay? So he's saying basically, I'm fighting for freedom from authority of the government so that it can't use violence against society. Government has what's called a monopoly on violence. Basically, it is the one that's authorized to use violence in order to stop violence, right? It's authorized to use violence to make people behave the way that they would have them to behave. Now, if a government is doing this rightfully and only using violence when it's needed, then it's less questionable. But in these cases where extreme violence is being taken and they're using people like Technoblade to enforce what they want in their societies, that is when it becomes questionable. And I think this is what Technoblade was trying to point out. The second course, I call it Using Violence to End Violence. Line 1. Blow it up, blow it all to smithereens. Whoa. Basically, he's saying he wants to completely destroy the government so that it can't come back, right? Basically, make the pieces so small that we can't even reconstruct a government. Line 2. Blow it all up till there's nothing left of you or me. Basically, what he's saying there is that he and Tommy will be sacrificed in the process, right, for dying for what they believe. Line 3. Heroes never prosper, they only get caught in the crossfire of war. Basically saying that the heroes, they don't prosper from war, but governments do. Line 4. So blow it up, blow it all to smithereens, right? So basically, we have to destroy their system of violence so completely that they can no longer maintain the monopoly on violence. They can no longer tell people what to do through the threat of force. All right, the bridge, which is kind of about the surveillance state. Line 1 says, Sun Tzu said, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Basically, the context is, you need to keep tabs on your enemies. Line 2, don't you know I'm a loner? Should have kept me closer. Basically, what he's saying is that you radicalized me and then didn't keep track of me. Now the outro, using violence to end violence. Line 1, I'm a villain, I'm bad, I'm not going back to the life I used to have. Basically, he's saying, I'm a bad guy because I don't accept your lies, so I can't go back to the way things were. Basically, you can't live in society lying to himself, and he doesn't want to create division between himself and others in society, so he has to separate himself. Line 2, I'm a traitor, I'm sad, I don't want to backstab all my friends. Basically, he's made friends in society, but unfortunately, they're okay with living inside of that society. Maybe they haven't been woken up to the lies of the government or the force that's being used in order to uphold that government. They will slowly over time peel off though and understand where he's coming from. Basically, right now everyone sees him as a traitor because he can't accept the lies, and so he's going to separate himself from society and go into exile. Line 3, but you left me no choice. It's you or the voices in my head that say. So basically, he's saying he has no choice because it's either accept the lies of the government or what he knows to be true. So either he has to live a lie or has to go into exile knowing what he knows. Line 4, blood for the blood god, show no remorse, chaos in my soul, and nothing more. Basically, he's saying he's going to use violence against the monopoly on violence in order to free himself of the situation and hopefully free everyone of the situation. And he'll have no regrets because we need freedom and nothing less. All right, well, hopefully this analysis gives you a little idea of why I think that this has a lot to do with the struggles of veterans getting out of the military service, because they may have experienced some things, they may have insider information that they have to reconcile with, they may question things, and it may seem unpatriotic at times because they may know the whole story. They may be aware of some things that in the media are not necessarily being reported accurately or fully in depth to what's actually going on. And so it may seem counterintuitive that some of the veterans are the ones who question the government the most, but it's because that the government, what government wants and what society needs, are not always the same thing. So hopefully this breakdown of No Heroes here was somewhat useful, somewhat interesting. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.